25th of November 2021.
What is this thing?
It's an asteroid, sir.
A small spacecraft on a collision course with an asteroid.
From news.com.au.
I'm Andrew Bucklow, and I've got news for you. Remember that awesome 90s movie Armageddon? You know the one I'm talking about. It's got Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck drilling into an asteroid in space to try and stop it from crashing into Earth and wiping out all of humanity.
What is this thing?
It's an asteroid, sir.
How big are we talking?
Sir, our best estimate is 97.6 billion.
It's the size of Texas, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Is this going to hit us?
We're efforting that as we speak, sir.
What kind of damage are we?
Damage? Total, sir.
Oh, it's such a good movie, isn't it? Well, fast forward 20-something years and NASA has just launched a real-life mission to deliberately smash a spacecraft into an asteroid to try and alter its course. How exciting is that? The whole thing is basically a test run in case there is ever a space rock that threatens to wipe out life on Earth. So in today's episode, we'll get an astronomer to explain the mission to us, and on the off chance it fails, he'll also give us some tips for how to survive an asteroid.
I would say the best advice is, for goodness sake, do not look at this thing.
Interesting. And finally, just for fun, we'll get news.com.au's resident film critic to run us through the best end-of-world movies that you've got to see before you die or are killed by an asteroid.
3, 2, 1. And liftoff of the Falcon 9 and DART on NASA's first planetary defense test to intentionally crash into an asteroid.
Alan Duffy is a professor in astrophysics and director of the Space Institute at Swinburne, and he joins me now. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I'm very excited about this machine that's being sent up to space to try and knock an asteroid off course. It's called DART. What does DART stand for, and what can you tell me about this machine?
So this is the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, a NASA mission that will hit the smaller of a pair of near-Earth asteroids, and that's the double of the title. There are two asteroids orbiting together, and by hitting it, will change the direction of that asteroid's travel or its orbit ever so slightly. And really, this is to test the principle that a potentially Earth-colliding asteroid might be knocked out of the way, saving the Earth. It's important to realize, though, that this asteroid is Didymos, and the smaller orbiting asteroid Dimorphos that we will be hitting, hopefully, is not a threat either before or after the potential collision, making it the perfect test location.
Well, that is good news. It took off this week. When is this DART going to reach its target?
So the mission is a 12-month duration. Really, we're thinking somewhere in the region of 11 months from now. We should be approaching that final acceleration phase and readying for impacts. And the entire thing it really is a one-shot mission. If it hits, wonderful. We get some data and we get to see what happens. And if it misses, it's now going too fast to ever return. So it's a bit of a nerve-wracking end to a year-long deployment.
Just on the off chance it does miss or the whole mission fails, what options do we have for trying to stop an asteroid that's heading towards Earth?
Well, there's always the classic Hollywood, just nuke it, send Bruce Willis up and set up a nuke to move it. And indeed, maybe you have a nuclear explosive to break up the asteroid, having smaller pieces that will burn up in the Earth's atmosphere rather than making it all the way to the ground and posing a threat. Bigger asteroids, that's just simply not possible. You can either try to move them, as we are trying with DART, but if they're less of a solid object and more like a loose pack of rocks bound together by their gravity, so maybe thinking of it more like a shoal of fish and a spear has just gone straight through and passed right through the center of, that is what we might see happen with DART. In that instance, we have to actually use a gravity tractor. So put a spacecraft beside the asteroid, let the asteroid's gravity pull the spacecraft, and in turn, the spacecraft pulls ever so slightly the asteroid back, fly a little bit away, let the process repeat, and slowly, agonizingly slowly, you'll be able to deflect that asteroid's path. But all of these are only in theory. We've never tested it.
Well, let's just chat about if an asteroid is heading towards Earth, a massive asteroid, how much time do we have to act to try and stop it or alter its course? Do we have days, weeks, months?
Well, we only ever see these asteroids usually by the reflection of the sunlight, which means if they're the sunward side of us, so they're closer to the sun than the Earth, then we are not seeing any reflected sunlight, meaning we're blind. So if they come from the sunward direction, we have almost no warning at all, and this has happened in the past. The other side of the solar system, we can see that reflected sunlight. We do get potentially weeks of warning, but we need years to be able to launch a mission, to change its trajectory, its orbit. And then we can only ever really affect a small change in that orbit. So we need to do it early enough such that that little change adds up to a big enough difference to miss the Earth. Well, this is why we need to find these things. Prevention is better than the cure. So we need to spot these things as early as possible. And as I said, we really need years of warning, not weeks or months.
Well, that's slightly concerning. How worried should we be about asteroids, hitting Earth and wiping us out potentially?
So the asteroids are definitely not our biggest problem on Earth right now, it's fair to say, but they are a problem. The asteroid size of Dimorphos is about 160 meters across. That's known as a city killer. That would take out essentially an entire metropolitan region if it was to hit. And those things are going to hit the Earth about once every 1,000 or 2,000 years. So it's not a super rare event by geological standards, but it's maybe not something we're going to be worrying about tomorrow. The key is, unlike a lot of other natural events that can worry us, these are entirely preventable. So we can work hard, and we are working hard to reduce that risk to zero.
Can you run me through some of the biggest asteroids that have hit Earth in the past?
Well, we only have to turn our minds back just a few years to 2013, where an asteroid just 20 meters across broke up over the city of Chelyabinsk in Russia. Now, the explosion in the air of this breakup released about 30 times the energy of the Hiroshima bomb.
Wow.
And yet, incredibly, and the footage is beyond belief, it looks genuinely like a Hollywood experience, no one died. There were 1,500 people injured, which was terrible, but considering what could have happened, we got off very lucky. And indeed, we can go back to the turn of the 1900s, so just in that new century, in 1908, a much larger asteroid, about 60 meters across, broke up or impacted in Tunguska, taking out about 2,000 square kilometers of Siberian forest. So really just flattened an entire forest like it was matchsticks. And this DART mission is hitting something that's 160 meters across. So you can imagine just how dangerous things can get with just a little bit of extra size. But for the mother of all asteroids, we go back 66 million years to the asteroid that was some 10 kilometers across, we believe, that struck the Yucatan Peninsula, causing a crater some 145, 150 kilometers across. It triggered tsunamis, regional firestorms, and a global winter, and most famously took out the dinosaurs. So those are super rare. We think with NASA now that we have scanned for all of those extinction level events, or nearly all of them. We're pretty confident. These smaller city killers are the ones we're really worrying about because they're so hard to see and that they can cause such enormous devastation.
Let's say we had, a city killer coming towards Earth. In the movies, we always see the government building shelters and they put all the VIPs in there in the hope they'll survive after the asteroid is hit. Would a shelter actually save us?
It depends if you've built a shelter in the city that's about to get hit. I mean, so with these kinds of missions, we would get an increasingly accurate picture of exactly where it will hit. And thankfully, most of the Earth is, about 2/3, is water. So most of the time it would hit water or areas without a city. So the best chance of survival is to, as accurately as possible, predict where it will hit and then just get out of the way. Just try to get as many people out as possible. If you do want to build a shelter, certainly you would have to go pretty deep. These things would detonate with the energy of certainly the one that Didymos, the DART mission, is trying to impact and change the direction of. That would be easily in the region of hundreds of nuclear bombs worth of an explosion in one area. So you have to get extremely deep. I suspect you probably could never get deep enough to withstand the shockwave that would go through the Earth if you were to stay in that city. So the best way to survive these kinds of events is to get out of the way, both as a planet, but if it's going to hit the planet, then get out of the way of where it's going to hit.
let's say that I'm, in a city and I look up and I see what looks like an asteroid coming towards Earth or streaming through the atmosphere. Do you have any other tips for how me and my listeners, how we could survive? Is there something we should do? Should we just be running to the nearest mountain?
Yeah, look, that's not a bad idea. So if you go up to high ground, that's going to help you survive the instance where there's a tsunami. So if it hits the water and it causes a tidal wave, you are a little bit better protected. I would say the best advice is, for goodness sake, do not look at this thing. I mean, it's going to be hard not to, but the brightness of the glare from these objects burning up in the atmosphere, that's actually what caused a lot of the injuries in Chelyabinsk. People not unreasonably looked up at this enormous burning fireball in the sky, whose brightness was essentially that of the sun by the time it finally erupted, and that caused a lot of retina damage. So make sure you're not looking right at it. If it's going to hit the water, make sure you're away from the beach. And really, at that point, perhaps if you want to get really improve your chances, I'm trying to be as optimistic as I can. If it's coming at that point, you're a bit late, but maybe cover your ears. So basically, the biggest risks you're going to experience are from the light, the heat of the event. So get a wall between you and that object. Don't look at it. Perhaps covering your ears might help your eardrums to survive not being burst, but I suspect the pressure wave that kicks through, it took out every window in Chelyabinsk. I suspect it's probably going to do the same to your eardrums, but at the very least, make sure you're not standing by a window, because a number of the other injuries was falling glass. So it's pretty sensible things, but I can assure you, when you see a fireball coming in, it's going to be very hard to avoid looking at. It's going to be quite a sight.
Another completely random question. If a massive asteroid was coming towards Earth, it was an extinction level event, is there any way that we wouldn't be able to know about it? Is there a way that the government could kind of keep it secret, you think? Or are there just so many astronomers out there that as soon as it was heading towards Earth, the word would spread and we'd all know?
Yeah, in fact, a lot of our modern asteroid detection process and pipeline rely on so-called amateur astronomers. There's nothing amateur about their technology and backyard equipment. And that's because there's just simply so much night sky to be constantly monitoring. So an extinction level event, absolutely, the amateur astronomers would see it.
News.com.au's resident film critic, Wenli Ma, joins me now to run us through the 4 end-of-world movies that you have to see before you die, hopefully not from an asteroid. Wen, what's up first?
First up is Cloverfield. This is a shit-in-your-pants, visceral movie that, if I had any doubts whether or not I would be useful in an apocalyptic event before this, that set it aside, I would be useless.
Right, okay.
I don't even know how to drive, so I honestly wouldn't know what to do if, for example, a many-legged monster attacked Sydney, which is what happens in Cloverfield, but for New York. It is a found footage movie, so the idea is that after the events have happened, somebody came across this camera footage, kind of like the Blair Witch Project.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it's a tight 1 hour and 22 minutes that follows a group of friends who are at a party when the monster attacks, and basically hell on earth. It's kind of terrifying. And by kind of, I mean like really, really terrifying. They did have to warn people though, because it's shaky cam, that especially if you're watching it in like say an IMAX screen, you could be prone to motion sickness.
Yeah.
But I think it's just J.J. Abrams produced this, and I just think it's a really, really like fun and interesting and scary and all of the emotions monster movie that goes, when the end of the world comes, I want to go in the first wave.
Let's have a little listen to some of the movie.
You try maybe calling 911, see if somebody else can get there? I tried. Okay, well, I mean, what about police, fire department?
Couldn't get through. I
okay,
tried.
it just seems a little...
All right, I'm adding that to my list. Wen, what's another one I have to see before I die?
I love The World's End. It is the third movie. It's a comedy in the Cornetto trilogy, which also includes Shaun of the Dead, also a bit of an end of the world movie. Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. So The World's End is the third one. It's directed by Edgar Wright. It's got Nick Frost and Sean
Simon Pegg?
Simon Pegg.
Yeah.
Simon Pegg. It was an S name. And Simon Pegg. And it starts off as kind of like this nostalgia trip about this guy who wants to go back. I mean, they're in their 30s or 40s now and go back and complete the pub crawl they never did as a teenager or they, kind of conked out before the very end. So they go back to their hometown. Everyone, apart from Simon Pegg's character, is, grown up, jobs, lives, wives. He has Arrested Development. He's stuck in the past and he's like, no, we're going to finish this 12 pub crawl. And then it turns out their pub crawl is happening basically in the middle of an alien invasion.
Oh.
Yeah. Things happen. I wouldn't say it's a happy ending, but it's a different kind of end of world movie.
Let's have a little listen.
I saw the boys the other day. We're going to go back to Newton Haven. Why? 5 guys, 12 pubs, 50 pints. 60 pints.
Oh, steady on, you alky.
This is our chance to finally finish what we started. We are going to do the Golden Mile, and this time
we are going to see it through to the bitter end. Or lager end.
All right, that one sounds quite amusing. Okay, that's right up my alley. Moving on to number 3.
Save Yourselves. This is a little indie movie that came out last year and it didn't really get noticed, but you can rent it online. It is a comedy with Sunita Mani and John Reynolds. You'll probably recognize them both as actors in sort of millennial TV projects.
Okay.
John Reynolds is in Search Party and they play 2 Brooklynites who are so addicted to their phones and technology. They're a couple. They decide enough is enough. We're going out to a cabin in the woods and we're just going to cut out technology for the next 7 days. Turns out, alien invasion, and they have no idea it's happening because they're cut off from the world. And the aliens in this are these like little furry poofs, like ottomans that you would have in your house, and they have these long extended tongues that emit like toxic things and it can move around. It's a really, really weird, quirky, funny movie that is, I mean, technically it's about how we're just so wrapped up in our own bubbles with technology that we don't recognize everything else that happens around us. And that might be the end of humanity.
Let's have a listen.
What is that? Has this been here the whole time?
The poof? I don't know. Probably.
Oh my god.
What the What is happening?
We need to turn our phones back on.
Sorry, making a smoothie. Listen, it's getting weird here in New York.
Serena, hello, are you there? Well, there's some kind of alien, very dangerous.
And finally, what is the 4th movie, the best end-of-world movie that we have to see before we die?
This is Melancholia. It is so different from the first 3 because even though there is a literal world-ending event, it is a kind of dreary and dark but absolutely beautiful drama about, mental illness and depression, actually, to really perk things up a bit. Kirsten Dunst is in this. It was directed by Lars von Trier, and she plays a woman on her... The movie's actually in 2 parts. In the first part, it's her wedding day. She's getting married to a character played by Alexander Skarsgård, and just over the day, her depression sort of overwhelms her and just everything that happens around her. And then at the same time, she can spot like a big red star in the sky, and then later on, the star disappears, and that's because this rogue planet that's about to crash into Earth actually blocks the star. And then the second part of the movie is told from her sister's perspective, Claire, played by Charlotte Gainsbourg, and that is basically everybody preparing for the end of the world, except for the fact that there's this false hope. Spoiler alert. Well, actually, you know what? You see the world ending at the very, very beginning, so you know how it's going to go. That the planet will pass us by and it's just going to be this really cool astrological thing. No, not so much. Kaboom.
Let's have a listen.
The Earth is evil. We don't need to grieve for it. What? Nobody will miss it.
Okay, when I'll be honest, I'm a little bit furious that Deep Impact and Armageddon didn't make this list. Why?
Because the world was saved.
Okay,
a little
you've
bit.
got me on a technicality there. Okay, well done. Wen, thank you for running us through those movies.
Thank you.
Well, fingers crossed this DART spacecraft actually works, huh? I don't know about you, but I'd find it quite comforting to know that we could stop an asteroid heading towards Earth if we had to.
The 2 halves are going to miss us by 400 miles, and most of the small particles have been vaporized.
That's all we've got time for today. I'm getting out of here, and I'll chat to you again tomorrow. See ya.